And as you sit, if you brought your own Bible, that's great. Open up to Deuteronomy chapter 6. If you didn't, that's great too. We've got some in the row in front of you. I really encourage you to open up to Deuteronomy chapter 6. We're actually going to go back earlier in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is a book that the word Deuteronomy comes from an understanding meaning the second telling, or the retelling of the law. When I think of a word like retelling of the law, it leads me to have more of the tendency to ignore the book than to want to read it. But as I try to teach confirmands, when we're going to be looking at the Ten Commandments, which you will see there in chapter 5, I try to teach them that really these Ten Commandments are God's love letter to us. And this whole book, the whole book of Deuteronomy, is about the love relationship the Father has for us and our ability to love Him back. From the Old Testament perspective, remember, pre-Jesus, law was all that they had to put their hope in, fulfilling the law, the detail of the law, for their salvation. Jesus is the fulfillment of that law, and that brings joy to you and to I. But even then, they would see the law as a delight. In fact, David in a number of the Psalms, talks about loving the law of the Lord and meditating on it day and night and the joy that it brings. Because this love of God comes as a covenant in the covenant form. The love of God comes to us from His authority to us as submissive to Him. It's just a gift. We don't have to earn it. You can't earn it. His authority is so much above ours that you can't do anything that would satisfy His need. So He just loves you. And the Spirit of God makes our works and our efforts acceptable to Him and beautiful. And Jesus is the fulfillment of everything the Father would have wanted in us as His children. And we get to have the benefit of Jesus. So, as we're looking at Deuteronomy 6, we do it in light of the reality. Moses had already been told he's not going to the Promised Land. If you remember the time when he was supposed to speak to the rock and tell the water to come up, and he was mad at the Israelites, so he hit the rock with his staff, which he had done once before. And the water came out. God still honored it. But that was Moses God wanted to be seen as the one bringing the water out, not Moses with the magic of his staff, which might have been the interpretation of the people. So Moses was taking God's glory, and God didn't like that. That was Moses' great sin. I'm sure there were others. But so Moses has been told he's not going to the Promised Land. 40 years has happened in the desert, and Moses is now recognizing his time with them has ended. He's about to hand the people of Israel over to Joshua, and Joshua's getting ready to take over and take them into the Promised Land. And Moses is writing basically the last will and testament. These are all the important things I want you to remember. Okay? And so they're just a bunch of disjointed, seemingly disconnected comments from Moses, but it's as things popped into his mind and his heart. He finishes. This is the last book that he wrote, and it gives us a great insight into the strength and power of God as He serves us. So, that being said, this being the initiation of a new series, the title of your study from today will be Building a Legacy. I'm simply going to be looking at inner life plus outward action equals blessing. Okay? And to do that, we're going to be looking primarily at verses 4 through 6 of Deuteronomy chapter 6. But we'll start by looking at the first 3 verses. It begins with these words. These are the commands, decrees, and laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you to observe in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess. All right? These are the commands, decrees, and laws. Sounds heavy to me, but it's not, because they come with a promise. And I love the so that's of God's Word. yesterday in our Mission U, we looked at some of the so that's of Titus 2. Why do we have these expectations of behavior? Well, so that. And then God speaks to the blessing. So let's see what the blessing is. These are the commands, decrees, laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you and observe in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess, so that you, your children, and their children after them may fear the Lord your God as long as you live by keeping all his decrees and commands that I give you, and so that you may enjoy long life. Wow. The so that and walking according to God's plan is a generational blessing and a long life. Looking out into some of you have got some so that's under your belt. the age things. The so that's long life, the blessing. What's that? Generations. Many generations. You got them in the house. Yeah, the generational blessing of life, of faith, of fearing the Lord your God. And that means not being afraid of him, but being living in respect and awe of a God who is the creator of all things, yet loves you, knows every detail of your life, yet loves you even more than you can imagine. The blessings. Now, here's the challenge. Here's the challenge. And it's a challenge for you and I. Hear, O Israel, and be careful to obey. Obey? Ooh. Hear, O Israel, and be careful to obey, so that, I like that, so that it may go well with you, and that you may increase greatly in a land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord, the God of your fathers, promised you. Now, if you remember in the reading, they get to go and possess a land with vineyards they did not plant, houses they did not build, riches they did not gather. And it's all going to be theirs. The blessings of God come simply by his outpouring to the children of Israel as they go to this great land. Because if you do remember the whole story, when they first escaped from Egypt, crossing of the Red Sea, they're at Mount Sinai, they send spies out into the land, and they come back, and they're all going, oh, we saw nothing but giants. We'd be like ants before them. They'd squash us like a bug. And then Joshua and Caleb say, no, yeah, I mean, that's true, but our God will fight for us, and it is a land of unimaginable wealth. Grapes bigger than we've ever seen before, and just all kinds of beauty. And that was the lead-in to, since the people of Israel failed to trust God, they were in the desert for 40 years until that generation died off. The new generation is ready to head in. That's the group that Moses is writing this new law to, or the second accounting of the law to. All right? So be careful to obey, and you're going to receive all of these. Just do it my way, God says. And you will receive all of these blessings, okay? That it may go well with you in the land that you're about to inherit, and that you may increase greatly in that land. God is setting up their legacy. What about us? Let's see. All right, 4 through 6. Here is the Shema that I had talked about in the introduction to worship, and you can read a lot more about this. But the Shema are verses 4 through 6 of Deuteronomy. These are the words that you will often, amongst others, that will be included in, if you have Jewish friends or ever been to a Jewish home and you see they have something attached to the doorpost at the outside of their house, there is a handwritten note in there. And these verses are part of what's in that note, always handwritten. This is also what you see in the gates. This is also what you see even today on an Orthodox Jew when they have a leather strap wrapped around and a box attached to their hand or to their forehead, the phylacteries they call them. These words would be contained in there. These words are also the beginning of every worship in the Jewish culture, worship experience, and in synagogues even today. And they're the very beginning because it all starts with God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength. Whew. These commandments that I give you today are to be upon your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, and when you lie down and when you get up. Verse 8, tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the doorframes of your houses and on your gates. All right, so it all begins with God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. He is one and only. All right? You are to have no other gods. Our God is a jealous God. He is jealous for our attention. Not jealous like you and I would be, because God can't sin. But he is jealous for our attention. He's jealous for our love. He's jealous to receive from us that which he first gives us. It all begins with God. Because what happened with the first law that Moses brought down off of Mount Sinai? He's carrying the tablets down, and he hears the singing of the people, and he gets a little closer to them, and they find they made a calf made of gold. And they're worshiping some other God. No longer, ever, would the people of Israel forget that the Lord God is the only one God. Only one to be worshipped. And they begin all of their worship with that mindset. All right? And that's where our hearts and our lives can begin. Every single day. As we seek to build our own legacy. Hear, O Israel, hear, people of Illyria, or wherever you are from. The Lord our God is one. Only. All right? The Inner Life Words verse is verse 5. But it's different than you might think. As we look at that, we consider the heart. What does it mean to love the Lord with all your heart? I did a word study on this, and the real definition of these words are as follows. The heart that's being spoken of are the will that we each have. Our decision-making ability, the commitments that we have, the commitments that we make. Love the Lord your God with every decision and every commitment. Okay, check the box, maybe D. I don't know where I grade myself on that. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart. All right, the next one, soul. The soul that's referred to is your whole being, all that you are, no division. Nothing gets between God and you. If something tries to get between God and you, it is removed, it is set aside. And there will be things constantly trying to get between God and you. No division to another. So we love the Lord our God with all your heart and with all your soul. So with in every decision and all the commitments that we make, in our whole being, that our personhood, our emotion, our physicality, our appetite and desires, all things are submitted and submissive to God. All right. So this is the command, the decree, the law. This is God's way. This is what God wants. Okay? And then we have in all of your strength. Strength is our every action with all that we do. So if you're in a good Jewish synagogue or a Messianic, even better, church that is people call them completed. Jews completed Messianic, where they worship Jesus and still hold on to a lot of the Jewish tradition and things. Our son and daughter-in-law have been going to a Messianic church for on and off for a little while just because they love the connection that's made there. But if you're in there, that's what your thoughts are beginning with. This is what your day begins with. The Lord your God is one. Today, love him with every decision, with every commitment you make, with your entire being, no division to another, and in all of your actions. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind, with all of your heart, your soul, and with all of your strength. You know, it's so important in these verses. Jesus used them. You remember that quote in Matthew when Jesus is being asked by the Pharisees what the greatest law is, and he says the greatest law is love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and the second is love your neighbor as yourself. You know those verses, right? Mm-hmm. Well, this is still a part of that. Jesus was pulling from what they would have fully recognized as a point of worship. All right, so we have it. Now let's see if we can make this a little more colloquial. Heart impressions, verse 6. These commandments that I give you today are to be upon your hearts. I got a quiz for you, not a tough quiz, but a weird one, of course, because it's me up here. We're going to look at percentage sharing ratios. And that sounds like a math term, but it's not because I can't do math. Let's look at it this way. How much of your heart would you say your favorite sports team or your favorite restaurant has possession of? How much of your heart would you say that takes up? I guess I should have Ohio State up here, right, Bob? How much of your heart? You know, for me, as I look at the Indians, you know, I mean, I've lived here in Ohio since '94, but I'm still a Tigers fan. But I've lived here since '94, so they might have 1 or 2%. You know, when they're doing great, like in '94, '95, '96, you know, it was more like 20% maybe. It was easy for me to enjoy and to receive joy from the Indians, you know, to be a part. And I didn't feel like it was fair for me to become a fan because they were doing so good those years and had not before that, right? But whoever it is, what is it? Your favorite restaurant? You know, Texas Roadhouse. It's our favorite. It is our favorite restaurant, I think. It's our favorite, right? My wife has to tell me what my favorite is. Yeah, no. It's our favorite. We love it. And, you know, if I could afford Ruth's Chris or Shula's Steakhouse, maybe I'd try those and they'd be our favorites too. But hey, this one's right across the street. So, Texas Roadhouse, favorite. How much percentage does your favorite restaurant hold? Oh, just a small percentage. Or your favorite activity? It doesn't matter. But here's the question. Here's the ratio thing. And I put these up just as examples. You think of it. Whatever example you want. As you consider what percentage those things own of your heart that they own, of your life experience that they own, how often do you have conversations with family members or friends or even strangers about those things? A couple times a week? A couple times a day if you're a big sports fan? It's easy to talk about, right? The percentage sharing ratio is pretty high. It may have a small percent of my heart, but I'm talking about it a lot, right? You can talk to a complete stranger about the Indians. You know, you can be I can be listening to a game on the radio and something great's happening and I've got to run to the grocery store or run in somewhere, and so I'm running, I'm listening, I'm grabbing something out. I see somebody wearing an Indians hat or an Indian shirt and I'll say, man, you listening to the game? I say, yeah, well, I've been in here for about a half hour. My wife made me come and buy bread. I said, yeah, my wife made me come and buy milk. But, no, not really. Just kidding. But here's the conversation just goes on. The joy. 7.5 hours. Well, I just came in and the Indians just scored 3 runs. They just went up on the top of the 8th. You know, hope they hold them off in the bottom of the 9th. You're having this conversation. What is our percentage ratio of things of God? And how much of our heart does He have? A lot, right? We love the Lord, right? And He holds a large portion of your heart. How many conversations and how easy are those conversations during the week? Do you talk to friends, to family members? Do you talk to total strangers about God? Do you see a shirt with a cross on it and say, hey, I'm a believer too. Hallelujah, it's great to be with you. Tell me what you love about Jesus. Not really, not in the grocery store. Not often, do we? So that sharing ratio is pretty low. The Lord has all of our heart, but we share very little. And what hurts even more is the effectiveness expiration date. The joy over the Indians or your favorite sports team only lasts until the next slump. If you're like me, I'm a fickle fan. The joy over your favorite restaurant only lasts until the flavor's gone. Till you eat that after dinner mint. The effectiveness of those conversations will only last as long as this world lasts. How long will the effectiveness of our conversation, what's the expiration date on the effectiveness of our conversations about God's love? It's eternal, right? That's the heavy. When I was reading through Pastor's study, when I was reading through the scriptures to prepare what I would talk with you about today, that's what grabbed me. And this. Verses 7 through 9 talk about impressing them on our children. When you sit at home, when you're on the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Is there any time in between that? No. It's always. Love the Lord your God with all that you are. And impress that love on your children at all times. Everywhere you go. Tie them. Make them so important are they that you keep them right in front of you. That they are always with you. Now, did they actually have to memorize? Did they actually have to tie them to their hands and bind them to their foreheads? No, that's not what God meant. But they did it as a personal discipline. Like anything, some did it for show. But some did it just as a reminder to themselves. Why is that? What is that? What does God want? He wants you to never forget that He loves you. So it's as you are going, everywhere you go, those around you, especially on your children. If you want to leave a legacy, you want to build a legacy of faith, you build it through your family by being consistent. So as they tied them on their the hands, but the purpose of the hands is so that as they are doing with their hands, as they are serving, that they would remember this as a part of the love of the Lord. And on the forehead, that all of their thoughts would be covered by the word of the Lord. Because as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So that all of your thoughts would be covered by the encouragement, the commands of love, knowing that the Lord our God loves us fully and completely. Verse 9 gets into the door frames and the gates. Notice the direction. Notice the direction. From heart, soul, strength. On the door frame of my house. On the outer gate. And as I go. That's what God's calling us to. So as I started preparing this, I was just here right between the eyes. And God gave us the grace that our three children all love the Lord, honored our intentions, and we're blessed by that. And the two that are married people that love the Lord, and so we're really fortunate. No, we're not fortunate. We're blessed by that reality. But it's never too late to build your legacy of faith in your family for generation to generation to generation. But I did start thinking about the many ways that my faith expression fell short with my children, with my friends, with my work, with my life. And it's felt pretty heavy as I was preparing this, kind of like what I feel in my room right now. And maybe it's just me, but it feels heavy. And I thought maybe it's time for an offering. Not the kind where you pass the plate. Come on, Terry. Maybe it's time for an offering. There's a great song. It's called Take My Life. We've sung it a couple times. But as part of this message, I want to offer us the opportunity. But I don't want you to sing this just because it's a song we're putting up. I'll certainly invite you to sing with us. But I invite you to sing this as an offering. The chorus of this song is, take my heart and form it. Take my mind, transform it. If your mind's like mine, it's a borderline. And take my will and conform it to yours. So I invite you to sing this with us. So take my heart and form it. Take my mind, transform it. Take my will, conform it to yours, oh Lord. Thank you. Confession of one God in our lives brings blessing. The inner life of giving God our heart, our mind, our will, allowing Him to form our hearts, to break off those hardened places and replace them with flesh, like Isaiah says. Our minds, to transform them, to get rid of all distractions that would take any of His glory away out of our lives. And all the things that we have placed there that don't belong, and have Him transform that. And to have our will fully conformed to His. Unimaginable blessings. Inner life, outward actions, unimaginable blessings. Look at it again, right through. If we can proclaim that Jesus is Lord, if we believe that God raised Him from the dead, John 8, or 10:8, we will be saved. And here's the promise. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 18. Do what is right and good in the Lord's sight, so that it may go well with you. In verse 24, so we might always prosper. Just bless me. Father, take our hearts, form them. Take our minds, transform them. Take our will and conform it to yours. That you would be glorified in our everyday. That our light would shine, the people would see our good deeds and glorify and praise you in heaven. In Jesus' name.